Hello and welcome. My name is Randell. I'm the Chief Executive of the Confederation of Professional Golf, or CPG. And welcome to this, the first of our new series of podcasts that I'll be hosting over the coming months. Talking to people from across the golf industry and friends of CPG. Obviously, it's been a truly extraordinary year in so many ways, and golf has faced many challenges. But we've faced them head on. And as a result, I think golf is flourishing in so many ways, and participation is up in so many of our member countries. And obviously when we talk Masters, we're normally celebrating the start of the golfing season. But this year for so many, it's the end rather than the beginning. And obviously what we're bringing is history in the first full Masters. Which is already bringing with it so much interest and intrigue. What does Augusta National look like in November? Is it playing significantly differently? Will Bryson overpower the course? And will the distance debate dominate conversation? And we've already seen so many fascinating things this week. The greatly expanded and brilliant content that the Masters are putting out there is fantastic. The course looks picture perfect, as always. Jon Rahm's had 2 hole-in-ones before the tournament even starts, which is, and if anybody saw yesterday's, it was a quite extraordinary hole-in-one. So for today's special, Masters special, I'm delighted to be joined by 3 people who I'm very proud to call friends. 3 people who have been and continue to make a huge impact on both the CPG and golf as a whole, and 3 of golf's most influential administrators. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us and making the time to do so this week. Today. Firstly, our current CPG Honorary President, Vice President of the French Golf Federation, and the man responsible for driving with huge success the 2018 Ryder Cup in Paris, Pascal Grizot.
Good evening.
Longtime chairman of the CPG and Chief Executive of the PGA of Great Britain and Ireland, Sandy Jones. Sandy, thank you again for joining us. And thirdly, and not least, our own World Golf Hall of Famer, CPG Board Director, former Executive Director of the European Tour, and to some best known as a Golf Channel analyst. So delighted. We've got somebody here with proper media experience, Ken. So great to have you along with us as well. And I wanted to start today's podcast with just Masters memories, really. I think my first memory would probably be when I was really starting to play golf back in 1986. I think I was 13, and obviously Jack made that a very memorable Masters tournament. Since then, I've been very privileged to spend time in Augusta National since 2008, and like myself, each of you have managed to spend a considerable amount of time and have the privilege of spending time at Augusta National. So I wondered if we might just start with some first impressions, some memories of how it all got started, what Augusta National means to you, and how you've seen any kind of special memories that you have. And perhaps, Ken, you could kind of kick us off by getting us started, because I'm guessing that you may have been the first of any of the 4 of us to be in attendance.
Well, thank you, Ian, and good evening both to Pascal and to Sandy. It's wonderful to be joining this podcast. My first memories, my first visit was in 1987, and the abiding memory I have is it's probably the only time I was privileged to go back 29 more times, making around 30 visits in all. But in 1987, it's probably the only time that I walked inside the gallery rope with a player. And I did so coming back up the 10th fairway with Seve Ballesteros. Many people will remember the 87 Masters for Larry Mize holding that outrageous pitch shot to beat Greg Norman on the 11th hole. But people, and I will never forget that Seve was also in that playoff, but unfortunately he three-putted the 10th hole. And I felt it was my duty to walk back up with him and his caddy, because clearly Seve was inconsolable, and understandably so. And as we parted at the very top of the 10th tee, I simply said to him words that Gary Player had often used. Remember, Seve, you are a great champion. Nobody defeated you over 72 holes. And that was all that was said. And what I do know is that Seve used that statement and that comment, if you like, with members of the British media during later in that next week, when he travelled to Cannes Mougins and actually defeated Ian Woosnam in a playoff to win the next Sunday. So that's my first of many wonderful memories at Augusta.
I think you were obviously executive director of the European Tour from 1975. Well, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm involved with the tour before then. But obviously, we've had the discussion, but 1987 was your first opportunity to be there. So I guess, you know, and now we see such a huge influx of European, both administrators and players, obviously at the event. Anything to recount, I guess, at those early days?
Yes, it was very difficult, I think, until really Seve, of course, won in 1980 and then again in 1983. But until that moment, really the only European players who could get access to play at Augusta would have been a major champion and or the #1 player only in our season-long order of merit. And it was therefore very, very restricted to our players. And certainly as far as our officials were concerned, the first year that we did receive one invitation, one accredited spot, was actually 1986. And George O'Grady went in my place in 1986. I had ruptured an Achilles tendon 3 weeks before the Masters. So George was our advance guard in 86. And really it was throughout the 80s, it was one pass only for us until into the 90s, we managed to get both of us in, and then it obviously increased from there. But it was a different time, Ian, with different people.
Yeah, totally. And obviously yours and George's impact was huge, because Europe then went on to win 7 of the next 9, Europeans went on to win the next 7 of 9 Masters tournaments. So I think you can take great credit for that, Ken. Sandy, you wouldn't have been far behind, Ken, I guess.
Well, it was 92, my first visit. So Ken was well established there, and he was a great guide to me when I turned up there, because you turn up there on your first visit and you don't really know just where everything is. And I got to say Ken and ultimately George as well were very great guides to me. And then when Lord Derby passed away, he gave the PGA 4 of the tickets, his tickets, that we could get access in future years with, and we did use them. And happy days, and Ken and I certainly had some happy days, quite a few. But it was always a special place. It was a place you always looked forward to going to. I can remember the first day I went there, and as a kid playing golf, I always dreamt of maybe someday I'll go to the Masters. Not as a player, never dreamt that, but always someday I'd be able to see the place. And the first day I got there, it lashed down with rain from the moment I arrived to the moment I left. And I thought, I'm not sure this place is that good in April. The weather's not that good. But it was the start of many years of pleasure. And over the years, I've got to say that the people of Augusta and the people of Augusta and the Masters were very kind and very generous, and always wanted to make it a good experience for you. And I always found that. And over the years, I had many, many happy memories going back. And I've been reflecting on them today when I think of the time. But I can't think there were many memories where Ken wasn't involved with me in them. So So, and Ken's recollection of the things that he saw and did there, and the people we met, I think is up to date, and it always will be with him. And it was just a privilege, and it's a privilege as a kid growing up outside Glasgow someday to finish up in Augusta. And 17, I didn't do as many as Ken, 17, but those are happy memories, and we just feel so privileged to have been part of it somewhere down the line. And, you know, I'm sitting here in a November night, dark night, wet night, thinking, how lucky have you been in your life to have had that experience and shared it with so many people over there. And it just feels strange in November, because I always looked forward that Augusta was the starting season for us up in Scotland in those days. When you got to the Masters was on, that was the start for our season. And this year it seems to be a bit out of date. I'm waking up most mornings thinking, I don't know which day it is. So I'm looking forward to it this year. But, you know, the thing about Augusta for me is, and those who have managed Augusta, I think they've been superb over many, many long years in putting the tournament and the club in the position it's in, respected across the whole golfing world. And I think that you know, there's been a lot of people, and I just looked out my history of Augusta book tonight, and it's a great book to read, because you realise some of the challenges that they had to go through, but how they mastered them all. And I think master is the right word. So I'm looking forward to this week, and it'll be interesting because it'll be colder, the ball won't fly so far, and the course will be playing a bit longer. So, and the game has changed so much with technology, so it'll be interesting to see how this week goes. I'm really looking forward to it, as I'm sure we all are. So that's my thoughts tonight, to be honest. I'm sure during the course of the week I'll think of other great moments that we had out of the blue, because you never knew who you were going to bump into on that golf course when you walked it. And as Ken said, he walked with Seve, and it was fantastic to have those moments watching it. Ken, I remember you and I walking with Colin Montgomery, one of the moments you probably remember. I'll never forget the fifth fairway, and his then wife, as it was, and you and I decided to walk on so we wouldn't get involved in the trouble. So, but these are just moments that we had, and we've all enjoyed them, and we've all been privileged to have them.
Pascal, I guess you may have been a little more recent with your first Masters, but what was your first experience?
You know, I'm sorry, but all my memories of Augusta are not so old. And I remember I came for the first time in 2006 because I was the captain of our national team, and Julien Guerrier, who won the British Amateur in 2006, we were invited by Pierre Bechman, who is a French member at Augusta, in November 2006, so exactly at the same period. And Pierre took us to Augusta just to give the opportunity to Julien Guerrier to practice on this fantastic course. And I must say that the first impact for me was huge, because it was visiting Augusta was a little bit like when you visit Venice for the first time and you are in love. So, you know, it's such an iconic place that I was so blessed to be there, and I was happy to be there because I was with the best French amateur. And I remember at this time he wanted to turn pro in 2005. And I told him as a captain that maybe it would be better if he could wait for one more year, and the French Golf Federation could support him to play the best tournament in the world. And 1 year after, he won the British Amateur. So, you know, I was so happy, and I was so happy to share with him and Pierre Bechman the fact that it was my first moment in Augusta. And after, but I will tell you other stories, I came back for many years because I was in charge of the bidding process to host the Ryder Cup. And I came the second time in 2007 because Julien Guerrier was playing Augusta this year. And after I came back in 2009 for the second time, and it was in the middle of the bidding process to host the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, so I guess you knocked it round under par yourself the first time there, Pascal, knowing you.
No, Augusta is such a difficult course, but in November, you know, it's totally different because the weather was, it was good weather, but it was cold, and the ball was not flying the same way that the ball can fly in April, and the course was long, very, very long. But you know, it was such a fantastic there were two fantastic 2 days, and each day we were playing 36 holes. We were starting as soon as it was possible, and we were coming back to the clubhouse when it was dark. So it was 2 full days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like the weather this week looks quite mild for November over there. Maybe a little wet, which will again will play long. But we'll talk more about distance, I suppose, later on. But obviously, one of the things that the Masters is so special in so many ways because of the legacy, the traditions, and the whole status of the championship that they've created. I was reading last night about when they introduced the green jacket and how iconic that's become. And back in 1937, the green jacket was brought out so that the members could be identified to provide advice and knowledge to the patrons. And then I was reading that not until 1949 did then the green jacket actually get worn by the champion. And obviously just a fantastic tradition that's become there. But I mean, in many ways, a golf club has elevated itself to such a huge level. Ken, any thoughts on exactly that and how they've been so really smart, clever in building the Masters brand in the way that they have over the years?
Yes, well, I think, Ian, from the very moment that Clifford Roberts, as a great entrepreneur and lover of the game of golf, joined with Bobby Jones as the great player of his era, if you like, in finding the then gardens, if you like, in downtown Augusta, and having them built with the great Mackenzie into the Augusta that we now know, and started their invitational tournament. They've had an eye for this history. They've had the resource with wonderful husbandry and promotion of the tournament to, if you like, make this great history and continue it. They also always, until this year, have held that first full week in April. So many people, including Greg Norman, when he was #1 in the world, may have played some golf tournaments on the American PGA Winter Tour up to Augusta, but they always had that feeling. And as Craig then said, the start of the season, and certainly the start of the season for those of us living in the Northern Hemisphere, was always Masters Week. And I think that they've maintained that wonderful tradition. On occasion, we've penned, if you like, entering in Magnolia Lane as entering virtually a sporting and a golfing cathedral. The closest I think that we have here in the United Kingdom to it is the All England Club at Wimbledon. And I asked a past chairman of Augusta or gave him that view. And he smiled and he said, Ken, that might not be a total coincidence, because unknown to me, the members of the All England Club and the members of Augusta National pooled their ideas and thoughts back in the day. And I could give no higher praise to either sporting venue. I think we all are very proud of the All England Club and the Wimbledon Championships here in the United Kingdom. And I think the Masters resonates similarly for us, those of us who love and have had the privilege of working in golf and attending the Masters.
Bobby Jones, Clifford Roberts, etc. These people in those early days set the standards and the value that the club should have. And the thing I admire it for is that obviously they haven't been able to live all through the period of history up until now, but those who have followed have stuck with those values and stuck with how it should be, and delivered it so well that, you know, that it's never gone off course. And I think that's, you know, we know lots of people have started good things and then people come along behind and change it and twist it and it goes off the rails. That has never happened in Augusta, and no, never will. And in fact, if anything's ever happened, they've always quietly just improved something that just brings it into the modern time. You think of the technology of the game today, they've addressed that technology and haven't lost the plot with it. I know they've lengthened the tees and some of the fairways and things, but they've never in any way taken the course backwards or taken the club backwards. Everything has always moved forward. And I think that is an amazing achievement for all the people who have been at some time privileged to be leaders within that club, to keep taking it forward. And I think we could all learn lessons from that across the game.
Here.
Totally. I remember my first time there. They were still on the old practice ground, which was quite. It was pretty small, and still the members' practice ground at Augusta National. Yeah. And then turned up the following year, and all of a sudden the world's best practice ground has been created, and looks like it's been there forever. That's just kind of the evolution that you see of it when we're fortunate to return. Pascal, I guess you'll have seen some changes even in the shorter time since you were first there, particularly in the way that the golf course has been changed, adapted to modern play.
First, I think that unfortunately the spectators, they can't realize all the infrastructure that you can have on site, because it's so huge. Yes, the course is part of the history, but since now, I think the last 10 years, they have done so many investments. The media center has totally changed. The administrative center has totally changed, and everything is huge. You were talking about the new practice facilities. Yes, in 2006, I remember when I came for the first time, I had the opportunity to practice on the old practice range, and as you said, it was small. And I don't know. I think when I came back in 2009. They had already this new practice, and it was absolutely amazing, with 2 fairways, one if the players want to practice a draw, or if they want to practice a fade. You have all the different shots that you can play, and this practice was absolutely amazing. And I think that it was now maybe you can find very good practice facilities, but I think that at the beginning, maybe Augusta was the first to have such a fantastic facilities. And the course, yes, what is fantastic, it's not that they have done many modifications on the course, maybe quite every year, but when you come back the year after, you can't realize that they have built a new tee, because it's exactly as if this tee was always there, and you even not remember where was the old tee, maybe 10 meters or 20 meters in front, but you can't even imagine where was the tee, because everything has been redesigned, rebuilt, exactly as if it has been always like that in the past. And this is absolutely incredible, and I don't know if there is another course in the world where they have done so many modifications where you can't imagine how it was in the past.
Yeah, totally. And not just the course, as you say, it's also the entire infrastructure. I mean, the new media center, well, relatively new media center, is phenomenal, and it just these things just occur there, and they do it in such an understated way, as you've said. So.
Yeah.
And maybe you would do it much better than myself, but you could speak about the marketing, because the marketing, it's the supreme marketing in the world. What they are doing in 1 week, I think it's the only tournament where you can buy the merchandise only in Augusta. You can't buy the Augusta brand on a website. The only opportunity to buy anything is to be on the golf course and to be part of the adventure. And I think it's unique. I'm quite sure that if you play Winged Foot this week, you will be able to buy a T-shirt from Winged Foot. But in Augusta, it's impossible. You can only buy merchandise in Augusta, and I think it's unique.
Yeah, absolutely. First time ever this year. There is an online shop, but it's restricted.
It's the first time.
It's restricted to patrons and guests. So I've been I've been spending plenty of time looking, and they now have a Masters gnome to celebrate the November Masters, I think, which would be a limited edition, I would think. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's it's exactly how they protect and value and add value to their brand in everything that they do, which is again, taking Sandy's point, is something which we can all learn from, and they embody the brand as well. So
they are also very lucky because it's the only major tournament which is played every year on the same site. So they can really reinvest year after year because they know that next year they will organize a new Masters. So it's give them the opportunity to invest and always to improve the facilities.
I'd like to talk a little bit about European success, as we've got some very influential people in European golf here, and obviously it means so much to us. And obviously 1980 was the first winner with Seve, who we've mentioned. You mentioned Ken, and Sandy, you told me a good story about one of your experiences with Seve on the phone yesterday.
Yeah, I remember Seve was out practicing one time, and I was hanging around, not much to do that particular day, no appointments, no meetings, no nothing. And I walked out with Seve, walked out down the bottom end of the course, and he shouted over, he said, "You can walk with me if you want," which was I wasn't expecting it, but anyway, I said, well, I'll just walk a few holes. Finished up walking about 15, I think, and I said to him, he said to me, this is a great golf course because it's the tightest golf course in the world, which I didn't see it that way because they didn't cut the grass, they leave the rough high. It was cut down pretty low, and I always thought, well, I could usually find my ball if I missed the fairway, so that's quite helpful. And I said to Seve, why do you say it's the tightest course? And he said, because I'm the best player in the world and you're just the chief executive. That's what I get. But I'll explain it to you. And it was holes. Every tee he stood on, he said, I'll just explain to you where you've got to land this. And he had these targets in his head for every golf hole on that course, and I'll never forget it. He said, you've got to hit that target like an archer hits an archery target. He said, because when you're there, you're in the perfect position to play onto the green because you're playing into the slope of the green. If you're not in that target area, you're always coming across the slope. And that is the death thing at Augusta. If you're coming across a slope, you can't hold the ball. You can't hold it on those greens. You must play into the slope of the green. And you can think of them, we've all been there. You can go through it in your head, the slope on those greens, and when you start thinking about coming down a fairway and which way that green lies, everything Seve said was spot on. And I watched all the players that year trying to play those holes, and I could see where they were in the right position or the wrong position. And I just thought, what a lesson that was on how to play that golf course. If you get out of position and you can't fire it into the green against the slope, you're always going to in danger of coming off the green or in an impossible position on the green. And that was such a nice conversation that day, and I just walked on and we shook hands at the end. I said, thanks for the lesson, I really enjoyed that. It'll work with me forever, and it still does. And I think that's the secret of Augusta, actually, for the players who have been successful there. They've known their way around over some years' experience, but when you're a first-timer on Augusta, I think it's hard work for them, but Seve had it figured out, as he had figured out most things in the golf course. So that was one of my greatest days there. I keep saying I've had great days with Ken there, but Ken, I've got to say, Seve just edged you that day.
I think Seve edges it for everybody. And yeah, you talked about how privileged you felt. I mean, most people don't get to experience Augusta, but to experience Augusta in the company of Seve just takes it to another level altogether, Sandy. So great story.
And it was just one of these things, you walked into a situation, not bad. And when Seve said, "Do you want to walk?" See, what was I going to say? No, I'll come back tomorrow. So I decided that was it. I was going, and it was great. And it's one of my greatest memories of the game across my whole lifetime, really. So fantastic. And I know Ken has shared many moments with many of these great players, and I'm sure he appreciates those moments as I do. So we were all privileged. Yeah. And in fact, we're here tonight talking about Augusta and talking about our experiences. We've all been privileged to have the chance to do it. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, and obviously Seve got around there fairly successfully a few times, which was great. So he must have known what he was talking about with the right spots. I wonder how those targets have moved, particularly this year with some of the length. And but before we get onto that, Ken, a couple of years ago at our annual conference, you did a fantastic question and answer with Jose Maria Olazabal. Obviously, he's another Spaniard with great success around Augusta, and it was so nice yesterday to see him coaching John Rahm, who I'm assuming after 2 holes in 1 this week doesn't need too much coaching. But you know, again, just if you could just expand a little bit on those. You know, obviously Bernard Langer went on to follow success from Seve, and then, you know, Europe just got amazing success through the late 80s and early 90s. Can you just expand a bit on that?
Yes, well, I think Sandy's story on Seve is so appropriate, Ian, because in 1980, when he became the first European to win the green jacket, and indeed the first international player other than Gary Player to win at Augusta. And then he followed up in 1983 with his second win. He, I think, gave the other Europeans the belief that they could go to Augusta and beat the great Americans of the day. You've mentioned Bernard Langer. He won in 85. And of course, that became a banner year for European golf, because Sandy Lyle won the Open Championship at Royal St. George's, and Europe regained the Ryder Cup at the Belfry. And we know how wonderful the Ryder Cup has become, if you like, on the back of that and many other successes. But talking of Jose Maria, the first time really that he showed was in Ian Woosnam's year in 91, when only a bogey at the very final hole kept Jose Maria out of the playoff with Ian. And we know how really disappointed, heart-wrenching bogey that he had, but he put that behind him 3 years later, and the first of his 2 wins in 94. And I always remember sitting, may have shared that story with you at the Congress with him, when, as we know, in the last year, we've lost his great mentor and friend Sergio Gomez, but I was sitting with Sergio Gomez outside the clubhouse and in no way wanted to interfere with Jose Maria going out to embark upon his final winning round, if you like. But I sat with Sergio, and simply as Jose Maria passed, I just wished him good luck. And he stopped and he smiled, and he had steel spikes, then not soft spikes, steel spikes, and he tapped them on the concrete as if giving me a nudge to the fact that the greens were rock firm, and he was very, very confident on the day, and he saw off Greg Norman and Davis Love for the first of his 2 green jackets. And that continued, as you say, in the 80s and the 90s were great years, but for those 5 guys, and of course others have followed since.
Yeah, and then Tiger took on domination for a little while, and then obviously a bit more recently some further European success with Danny and and
Sergio, yes.
making their breakthroughs, which was
and
great.
And I think we very much hope. I think the leading ranked European going into this year's Masters is John Ram, and I think many of us feel that he will be a legitimate European challenger in what is obviously a very strong American strike force with DeChambeau, with Brooks Koepka, and with Dustin Johnson, three real heavyweight Goliaths, if you like.
Pascal, I think more special memories from you. I think you mentioned one 2011 to me.
2011 was very special. So I told you that I came back to Augusta after 2007. I came back for the second time in 2007, and it was because France has decided to bid to host the Ryder Cup. And at that time, it was very important to be at Augusta for the first major tournament of the year, to meet all the important people. And I came back for the third time in 2010, and fourth time in 2011. And France spent 3 difficult years to bid for the Ryder Cup, because nobody could at that time imagine that France had the legitimacy to host the Ryder Cup. We had 2 good French players who played the Ryder Cup. We had a good course at the Golf National, but we had also great competitors like Spain, like Portugal, like Germany. And I remember the decision announced by George O'Grady to tell which country will host the Ryder Cup was the 17th May of 2011. So when I came to Augusta in 2011, only 1 month before the announcement, it was very special, because it was really the last month before the announcement, and all the countries were trying to convince the owner of the rights, so PGA Ryder Cup Europe, that their bid was the best. And I have a good friend. This friend is Desmond Dermott, and he has helped me a lot during the bidding process, because he really gave me good lesson to learn all the codes of the Ryder Cup, and he gave me many very good advice. And in 2011, I remember all the countries, Germany, but Portugal and Spain, they were trying to speak each time with George O'Grady. George O'Grady was at that time in Augusta, and all the federations wanted to speak with George, because they know that George would have the final decision at the end. And I remember Dermot told me, Pascal, you will not speak with George during all Augusta. And I said, but I can't do that. I am here for my lobbying. I want to convince George. I want to speak with all the influent people to help me to get this opportunity to host the Ryder Cup. And he said, no, Pascal, you will not speak to George O'Grady. I will do that for you. And I knew Dermot. Dermot was a close friend, but he was Irish, and I didn't know. Yes, I was sure that I could trust him, but it was a huge responsibility for me. But Dermot was such a close friend that I had to do what he told me to do. And during all Augusta, I had absolutely no conversation with George. And I remember every night we had dinner with Dermot in his house, because Dermot always rent a house close to Augusta. And we had dinner every night. But as soon as Scott Kelly and George O'Grady were arriving, usually around 8:30, Dermot was telling me, Pascal, you leave. And each time I had to leave. And Dermot was alone with George Grady and Scott Kelly. And he was convinced them that France was the best destination to host the Ryder Cup. And he did a fantastic job during all that time. And George, each time George was asking to Dermot, but why, when I'm coming, Pascal is leaving? And Dermot was saying, you know, Pascal is always tired and he had a very difficult day. And you know, he wanted to leave. And George, during all that, couldn't understand why each time I didn't want to speak with him, but behind the scene, Dermot was doing the job. And I remember the Germans, they were spending times with George. Spain was doing the same thing. Portugal was doing the same thing. And I was not allowed to approach George at all because Dermot was doing the job. And you know, I remember this Augusta 2011 because I was there for my lobbying, but in fact I did nothing because Desmond Dermot did everything for me.
Irishman to Irishman.
And it has worked.
Yeah, it seemed to work. Yeah, it's all about having the right friends, Pascal. So
yes, absolutely, camaraderie and friendship.
Yeah, totally. Great story. And I mean, that takes us on, I guess, to a little bit of the reason we've been privileged to go is for business. And what a meeting ground when all of golf comes together in April normally. And if that tree could speak, it could tell some phenomenal tales. I'm sure for so many years we gathered under the tree, and now the meetings moved up the first fairway to the Magnolia Suite. But yeah, a great meeting ground and a great place for many of those stories.
I think your suggestion of having the tree mic'd up, Ian, is the snoop of the year, particularly as I think there's certain people still trying to contest an American presidential election. So I think if the tree could speak, it would, as you say, it would have all of the golfing stories and the folklore, probably going right back to Clifford Roberts himself and Bobby Jones.
Yeah. I mean, certainly one of the most special memories I have of and one of the most special things each time we're lucky to attend is that Wednesday evening cocktail party that the Masters hosts so well. And again, to be able to look out over the golf course in the peace and quiet of that evening in many ways, and have the privilege of standing under the tree, that's always a highlight for me when we're able to attend. And
we all look forward to it, and I think it's a highlight in a very difficult year for all of us around the world. And the fact that we're going to be looking at Augusta and the great players that will be there, and the excellent tournament, and it will bring memories back to all of us, but it'll be positive memories. And as I say, we're living in this time when you've got a stress point nearly every day in your life because something pops up. I'm fed up reading the news. I'm not looking at news anymore because I know there's nothing positive. But looking at Augusta over the next few days is very positive for us all.
Yeah, totally. So, a November Masters. How do we think it's going to? Is it going to play differently from what we've seen before? And obviously, we wouldn't be able to conduct a podcast this week without talking about the impact of distance that seems to obviously have come to the fore more than ever. I was watching the coverage a little last night, and they were saying how interesting it was to be watching the players on the practice ground and not one of them working on technique with their coaches. It all seems to be about strategy, and strategy this week against, I guess, for some, the difference between April and now, and also this whole strategy as to whether they're putting 48 or 47.5-inch drivers or 48-inch drivers in the bag.
Well, I think the players of today are so intelligent on their strategy and course management. They're way ahead of how that used to be for everybody. And I think that they're not going to go out there and just lash it around and get into all sorts of difficult positions. So I think they'll have all got the plan on how to work their way around that golf course, just like Seve's targets. And I think they've all got that ability now, and they've certainly got the skills to play the game at that level and control it. So I know a lot of people say it's all about just bashing it around, but I don't think Augusta is just a bashing around golf course. So these guys will have worked it out. It won't be drivers out the bag all the time, because they'll never be always in the right position.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see, Ian. And I think the story that Sandy told so wonderfully of that experience with Seve all of those years ago will still come into play. What Seve said to Sandy is very similar to how Nick Faldo always saw, I think, in Augusta, like a chessboard. And unquestionably, there are those, and you mentioned the era, the Woods era from '97, Mickelson with his 3 wins. Those players, I think, are among a small coterie of experienced players and great players who could putt the Augusta greens virtually blindfolded.
Yeah.
I know we had a wonderful ladies European Tour event in Dubai last week under floodlights. And I'm not for a moment thinking that we'll ever have a Masters under floodlights. But I do think in a slightly similar way, you could put blindfolds on Phil and Tiger and they would still putt beautifully. They'd still hole a lot of medium distance putts because they'd be in the right place with their approach play. And I think that will still remain a real key. I think we saw last year with Koepka, with Dustin Johnson, with probably Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, all finding now a way to play the Augusta National and get very, very close. I know last year was the renaissance of Tiger Woods, brought so much joy to so many in golf and indeed including his peers. But I would think this year, I was chatting with Neil Coles earlier in the week, and Neil just now feels it's probably maybe a bridge too far for Phil and Tiger to win again, because as he puts it, and I think as Sandy has alluded to it, that there are now so many great players, all very, very capable. We saw that with Colin Morikawa, a young American player winning the PGA on the West Coast. And we've seen what DeChambeau has done to Winged Foot, which Pascal has mentioned earlier. And it may very well be that, as he says, you can get a Winged Foot merchandise shirt any day of the year. But of course, not many players have tried to tackle Winged Foot in the past in the way that DeChambeau did so successfully at this year's US Open. So it will be very interesting to see if he brings out the longest of all drivers, and if he does try to power it into submission. I'm hoping, as rather Seve and said to Sandy, and Sandy has reiterated on our podcast tonight, that maybe Augusta will not just subside as indeed Winged Foot did to the brute power.
I mean, obviously we live in a world of data and statistics, and it was interesting to see the kind of stuff that's been around suggesting it's a second shot golf course, and the people who are best in strokes gained through the approach shots seem to be hugely successful, and that's where it was very interesting to hear from Sandy about Seve saying you set up the second shot by the tee shot, obviously, and then you've got to be able to execute the second shot. And I just think it's, as you say, it's going to be interesting to see from where they're playing the second shots and whether they can still have that degree of control, because they've got to get it in exactly the right place. Any thoughts, Pascal?
No. I think that you said everything. For sure, the longest drive will be a huge advantage, because the greens are so difficult to attack that it's always better to play pitching wedge than having a 7-iron or something else. So yes, for the long hitters, it will be a huge advantage. And in Winged Foot, you had rough. In Augusta, there is no rough, so it's even easier for the long hitters.
It would be remiss not to make some predictions, and I'm going to start it off. I'm going 3 J's: Justin Thomas, Jason Day, and Jon Rahm. Just to get us started.
Justin, he played well last week. It's the kind of course which can be good for him. And yes, Dustin Johnson, if I may, maybe.
Yeah, well, I've got to say, I think Rahm is my favourite this week. I just have a feeling for him that he can get through this one this time, and I think he deserves it. There was a time when he started at the beginning, I wasn't sure on him, because he always seemed to make an error somewhere along the way, but it looks like he's got control of things now. And I really think that he could be the man this week. Thomas, I'm not so sure about. I'm not sure he's quite got that game or the mentality to come through when he gets in a winning position. I'm not sure about him at all. So, and I was looking back when Webb Simpson had such a close thing last year, and you do wonder, do you think he could do it again this year? Probably not, but I wouldn't be surprised if he appeared in that running towards the end. I think, and the way the weather is, because the fourth get some cold wind in the wrong direction for them, making the course more difficult. So we'll just need to wait and see how that all unfolds. But the one thing I think we're going to guarantee ourselves is a very entertaining and very interesting week of golf to watch. I think it's all on the page for us, and I'm going to enjoy watching it.
Yes, Ian, the 2 R's for Europe, Jon Rahm and Justin Rose. I know Justin has not had the best 18 months or so. I understand that. But I think he got ever so close. He did get one hand on that green jacket, didn't he, when he lost in the playoff to Sergio. It's a great pity that Sergio will not be there due to COVID. But I think Justin Rose normally putts the Augusta greens very, very well. Yes, so I've got a feeling that he could be a European challenger along with Jon Rahm, who I think is Europe's outstanding chance for the 2020 Masters. What we do know is, gentlemen, it'll be a very big ask for all of the Europeans. We know how capable the European and indeed the international players are, but this 2020 truncated season seems to have thrown up a regeneration of great American power with Johnson, with Koepka, and now with DeChambeau.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely correct observation, Ken, as you always are, but I think that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, well, Ken, I would have to have great allegiance with the 2 you've mentioned, and they both share initials with my son. So, yes. Both JRs. So, yeah, I'm all for that. Well, it's been great chatting. I'm sure we could chat for a lot longer. It's always a pleasure to be sharing stories with the 3 of you, and a thoroughly enjoyable. Any final comments before we close?
Maybe Jan, if you allow me, I have one. As a French, I would like to speak about the cellar of Augusta. Maybe nobody knows, but it's maybe the best in the world, because you have all the best French wines, but American wines too. But since more than 50 years, they have allocations of the best Premier Grand Cru in France. And it's something absolutely amazing. And when I came for the first time in 2007, I had the opportunity to visit the cellar, and it was the first time in my life that I have seen all Premier Grand Cru in each size of bottles. So you have, half bottles, you have Giroboam, you have all the different size of bottle in the best wine and the best Grand Cru, the French Grand Cru. And I think that I have never seen that in any place in the world.
How appropriate to finish this at 10 to 7 at night, 10 to 8 your time, Pascal, with mention of wine, and we can all go and enjoy one now. But it's been thoroughly enjoyable to host this podcast.
Yeah.
A big thank you to the three of you, Pascal, Sandy, Ken, for all that you do for us at CPG and for your time this evening. It's certainly inspired us. We can't wait for tomorrow now, and I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic tournament ahead. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.